Commander Hyuk pressed his clawed hand against the control panel of his ship, the Silent Watcher. His reptilian eyes glowed with excitement as he stared at the holographic display floating in front of him. 3 small human settlements appeared. On the screen, scattered across the asteroid belt like tiny dots of light in the endless darkness of space. The settlements looked so basic, so primitive, simple metal buildings that reflected the distant starlight with a dull shine. No fancy force fields protecting them, no massive weapon batteries pointing outward into space. Just plain ordinary structures that seemed to say, "We're defenseless to anyone watching." Lieutenant Mira sat at her sensor station, her 6 arms dancing across the controls as she gathered information about these strange new creatures called humans. Her compound eyes studied the readings carefully before she spoke. "Sir, these humans seem really behind in technology," she reported, her voice carrying a hint of surprise. "I don't see any energy shields around their buildings, no plasma weapons that I can detect. They don't even have quantum communication systems linking their settlements together." Hyuk's mouth stretched wide in what his people considered a smile, though it would have terrified any human who saw it. His sharp teeth gleamed under the bridge lights. This was exactly what he had hoped to find, an easy target for the Empire's expansion. "Perfect," he said, his voice filled with satisfaction. "Send a message to the War Council immediately. Tell them we've found our next conquest. These humans will make excellent slaves for the Empire." Meanwhile, billions of miles away on the Imperial homeworld, Admiral Vex sat in his massive command center. The walls around him displayed star maps showing all the worlds the Empire had conquered over the centuries. Each glowing dot represented another species that had fallen before their might. When Hyuk's message arrived, Vex read it with growing pleasure. Another primitive species to add to the Empire's collection. Another world full of resources and workers to fuel their expansion across the galaxy. Vex had commanded the 47th Subjugation Fleet for over 20 years. In all that time, they had never failed to crush any resistance they encountered. Some species tried to fight back. Others surrendered immediately, but the result was always the same: total victory for the Empire. He looked at the data about these humans and felt a familiar sense of confidence. No advanced weapons, no defensive systems, no unified government that could organize resistance. They would probably surrender the moment they saw the Imperial fleet approaching. "Send orders to the 47th Fleet," Vex commanded his officers. "Prepare for immediate annexation of the human territories. Standard subjugation protocols. This operation should be completed within 1 standard rotation." His aide, a nervous creature with tentacles instead of arms, scribbled notes quickly. "Sir, should we attempt diplomatic contact first? Standard procedure suggests..." "Unnecessary," Vex interrupted with a wave of his hand. "These primitives won't understand our superiority until they see our power. We'll make contact after they surrender. It will be faster that way." The Admiral leaned back in his command chair, already imagining the victory celebration that would follow. Another easy conquest to add to his record. Another step forward in the Empire's domination of the galaxy. He had no way of knowing that these primitive humans had been watching and waiting, learning from every alien signal that crossed their space, preparing for this exact moment. The AHIB, small diplomatic shuttle Harmony's Edge, floated quietly in the void of space, its white hull marked with the blue and red symbols of the Korean Colonial Federation. Inside the cramped bridge, Captain Jin stared at the alien message that had just arrived on his communication screen. The words were harsh and demanding, translated by the ship's computer from whatever language these creatures spoke. Jin read them again, his jaw tightening with each line. These aliens weren't interested in trade or friendship. They wanted complete surrender of all human colonies, immediate evacuation of certain star systems, and submission to something called the Galactic Empire Communications Officer. Yuna looked up from her station, her face pale. She had been monitoring alien signals for 3 years, but nothing had prepared her for this moment. "Captain, they're demanding our surrender, every human settlement in this sector. They want us to abandon our homes and accept their rule." Jin walked to the main view screen, where he could see the massive alien ships waiting in the distance. They looked like nothing humanity had ever built, sleek organic shapes that seemed to pulse with their own inner light. beautiful, and terrifying. At the same time, what's their tone? Jin asked, still studying the alien fleet. Standard intimidation tactics, sir, Yuna replied. They're trying to scare us into giving up without a fight. The message keeps repeating how powerful they are and how useless resistance would be. Jin had spent 15 years in the diplomatic corps. He had negotiated mining rights with asteroid prospectors, settled disputes between colonial governors, and helped write the peace treaties that ended the Mars Rebellion. He knew how to read between the lines of any message, and this one was clear. These aliens saw humans as nothing more than insects to be stepped on. But Jin also knew something these aliens didn't understand about humanity. Humans didn't respond well to threats. Send our response, Jin said calmly. Tell them we suggest they reconsider their position. Make it polite but firm. Yuna's fingers moved across her keyboard, carefully crafting the message in the diplomatic language she had learned at the academy. The words were chosen to be respectful but not submissive, open to negotiation but not weak. Light years away, aboard the Imperial flagship, the translation computers struggled with the human response. The alien technology that had successfully translated 1,000 different languages stumbled over the subtle meanings hidden in human speech. The respectful tone was lost. The diplomatic phrasing became jumbled. The careful balance between strength and openness disappeared entirely. To Admiral Vex, reading the translated message on his command screen, it sounded like nothing more than frightened begging. The humans were clearly terrified and ready to surrender. They were asking for mercy, pleading for their lives. Pathetic, Vex muttered, his reptilian features showing disgust. These creatures are even weaker than our intelligence suggested. His tactical officer, a spider-like creature with multiple eyes, leaned forward. Sir, perhaps we should accept their surrender and move to occupation phase. No, Vex said sharply. They need to understand our power completely. Fear is the foundation of proper control. Destroy their vessel. Show them what happens to those who waste our time with weak protests. The weapon systems of the Imperial flagship charged with a deep humming sound that echoed through the bridge. Energy gathered in the massive plasma cannons that could destroy entire cities with a single shot. Captain Jin was still studying the alien ships when the attack came. There was no warning, no final ultimatum. One moment the Harmony's Edge was peacefully waiting for a response, and the next moment it was gone, vaporized in a brilliant flash of light that briefly outshone the nearby star. The explosion was visible from New Sol Colony, where thousands of people watched in horror as their diplomatic mission ended in murder. On Earth, in the underground command center beneath Sol, General Park received the news within minutes. His aide burst into the strategy room where Park was reviewing defensive plans with his senior staff. Sir, the Harmony's Edge has been destroyed. All hands lost. The aliens fired without warning. Park stood slowly, his weathered face showing. No emotion. He had fought in 4 different wars and had hoped his children would never have to see another one. But these aliens had just made that choice for him. He walked to the red phone that connected directly to every military command on Earth and the colonies. Activate Protocol 7, he announced to his staff. Send the message to all units. No more diplomacy, no more peace talks. From this moment on, we fight. The Imperial warships moved through space like a pack of metal predators, their sleek hulls gleaming under the light of distant stars. Admiral Vex watched from his command bridge as his fleet approached the first human colony. A small mining settlement on Titan, one of Saturn's moons. The attack began at dawn, Titan time. Massive energy beams lanced down from the alien ships, striking the colony's outer defenses. The human defense platforms, crude kinetic weapons and missile batteries, returned fire bravely but uselessly. Their projectiles bounced harmlessly off the Imperial energy shields. Within 3 hours it was over. The human defenders had abandoned their positions and fled deeper into the moon's rocky terrain. Imperial landing craft touched down on Titans. Surface, disgorging thousands of alien soldiers, who quickly secured the abandoned facilities. Another flawless victory, Admiral Vex reported to Imperial Command, his voice filled with satisfaction. These humans scatter like frightened prey animals the moment they see our superior firepower. Their resistance collapsed completely, the Yao. Imperial officers on the bridge clicked their approval. their alien features showing amusement. This was exactly what their intelligence reports had predicted: primitive humans running away at the first sign of real military power. But Captain Bock, who commanded the ground forces now occupying Titan, found himself troubled by small details that didn't quite fit the picture of panicked retreat. He walked through the abandoned human facilities, his four eyes taking in everything around him. The humans had left behind equipment, yes, but every single piece had been carefully destroyed before abandonment. Computer systems were wiped clean, their memory cores physically shattered. Weapon manufacturing facilities had been systematically dismantled, with crucial components removed and taken away. Even the food storage areas had been emptied in an orderly fashion. This wasn't the chaotic flight of terrified civilians. This was the methodical withdrawal of disciplined soldiers. "Sir," one of Bock's lieutenants approached him in the main command center. "We've captured 17 human prisoners, but their stories don't match up." Bock examined the interrogation. Reports with growing confusion. Some prisoners claimed the human military had only a few thousand soldiers total. Others insisted there were millions of trained fighters spread across dozens of hidden bases. The numbers for human spacecraft ranged from 50 ships to 5,000, depending on who was being questioned. Either these humans were completely disorganized and had no idea about their own military strength, or they were deliberately feeding false information to their captors. "Sir," Bock contacted Admiral Vex through the secure communication channel. "Something feels wrong about this victory. The human retreat was too organized, too clean. I think they're studying us." On the flagship, high above Titan, Admiral Vex barely looked up from his tactical displays. The next target was already selected: a larger human colony in the asteroid belt that would provide even more resources for the Empire. "Paranoia, Captain," Vex replied dismissively. "You're seeing patterns where none exist. These primitives are simply more organized than the usual rabble we conquer. It changes nothing. Prepare your forces for redeployment. We move on the main human stronghold tomorrow." What Admiral Vex didn't know was that beneath Titan's surface, in hidden bunkers carved deep into the moon's rock, human observers were very much awake and working. Lieutenant Day crouched in a concealed observation post, watching Imperial soldiers through a periscope that barely protruded above ground. She had been recording everything since the attack began: ship configurations, weapon types, shield frequencies, troop movements, communication patterns. Her small team of intelligence specialists worked quietly around her, their equipment powered by geothermal energy tapped from Titan's core. They had catalogued 47 different types of Imperial weapons, identified weak points in their armor, and recorded the tactical frequency bands their communications used. "Boss," whispered Corporal Min from his position at the communications. "Array. We've got a complete scan of their flagship's hull composition. The deep penetration radar got a full structural analysis when they passed overhead." Day smiled grimly as she compiled the intelligence package. Every Imperial ship design, every weapon signature, every tactical pattern was being recorded and transmitted to human command centers throughout the solar system. "Intelligence package complete," she whispered into her encrypted communicator. "Uploading tactical analysis now. These aliens think they won, but they just gave us everything we need to destroy them." The data streamed through hidden relay stations, bouncing from asteroid to asteroid, making its way back to Earth, where human military scientists would study every detail. The Empire had won this battle, but they had also revealed their secrets to an enemy that specialized in turning superior technology against its creators. The real war was just beginning. The space around Kepler Station shimmered as dozens of Imperial warships dropped out of hyperspace, their massive hulls casting shadows across the human colony. Admiral Vex stood on his flagship's bridge, expecting to see the same scene that had played out at Titan: frightened humans abandoning their positions and fleeing into the darkness. Instead, his reptilian eyes widened in shock. Kepler Station. Wasn't the defenseless mining outpost his intelligence reports had described? The asteroid had been transformed into something that looked like a mechanical hedgehog, bristling with structures he had never seen before. Massive metal rings surrounded the station, each one rotating slowly and crackling with electrical energy. Strange cylindrical towers jutted out from the asteroid's surface at odd angles, their dark mouths pointing directly at his fleet. What looked like giant satellite dishes were actually focusing arrays for weapon systems that his computers couldn't identify. "What are those platforms?" Captain Bock demanded from his position at the tactical station. His four eyes darted between the sensor readings and the visual displays, trying to make sense of what he was seeing. "Our databases don't recognize any of these weapon types." Before anyone could answer, space itself seemed to come alive with streaking lines of light. But these weren't the energy beams that Imperial forces were used to fighting against. These were solid chunks of metal, moving at impossible speeds, tearing through space like bullets fired by an angry god. The kinetic projectiles slammed into the Imperial formation with devastating force. Admiral Vex watched in horror as his energy shields, the same defensive systems that had protected his fleet through a dozen campaigns, simply collapsed. The solid metal rounds punched through the protective barriers as if they weren't even— "Their shields are failing," shouted his tactical officer. "These projectiles are moving at 12% of light speed. Our energy barriers can't stop solid matter at that velocity." On the human battleship Defiance, hidden among the rotating defense platforms, Commander Hana watched her targeting screens with cold satisfaction. The railgun batteries were performing exactly as designed, their nuclear-powered magnetic coils accelerating tungsten rods to incredible speeds. "Railgun Battery Alpha, target the flagship's main weapon array," she ordered calmly. "Battery Beta, hit their shield generators. Battery Gamma, aim for their engine section." Her weapons officer, Lieutenant Quan, grinned as he locked onto the massive Imperial ship. "Ma'am, all batteries report ready to fire." "Fire," Hana whispered, thinking of Captain Jin and the crew of the Harmony's Edge. "That's for our people." The tungsten rods streaked across space faster than the Imperial computers could track them. The flagship's main plasma cannon exploded in a shower of sparks and molten metal. Its shield generators overloaded and went dark. Its engine section sprouted a dozen holes as the kinetic rounds punched clean through the hull, all around the Imperial fleet. The same scene was playing out. Ships that had conquered entire star systems found themselves helpless against weapons that used simple physics instead of exotic energy. The aliens had built their entire military doctrine around fighting energy-based conflicts, ship-to-ship plasma battles, where superior technology and stronger shields determined victory. But humans didn't fight fair. They fought smart. Impossible. Admiral Vex stared at his tactical display as red warning lights flashed across the screen. Half his fleet was already damaged or destroyed, and the human weapons just kept firing. "How are they penetrating our shields? Our defensive systems can stop any energy weapon in the galaxy." His chief science officer, a creature that looked like a walking collection of tentacles, worked frantically at his station. "Sir, these aren't energy weapons. They're firing solid projectiles at relativistic speeds. Our shields are designed to deflect or absorb energy beams, not physical matter, moving at near-light velocity." Another wave of kinetic rounds tore through the Imperial formation. The heavy cruiser Star Render broke apart as tungsten rods punched through its reactor core. The destroyer Void Stalker went dark as its command section was simply erased by a perfectly aimed shot. "Fall back," Vex ordered desperately. "All ships retreat to minimum safe distance." But even as his remaining ships tried to pull away from the human fortress, the railgun platforms kept tracking them, kept firing, kept punching holes through hulls that had been designed to withstand the most powerful energy weapons in the galaxy. "Commander," Hana smiled grimly as she watched the alien fleet retreating in disorder. The trap had worked perfectly. The Empire had expected to fight humans the same way they fought everyone else, with superior technology and overwhelming energy weapons. They had no idea that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't advanced technology at all. It was the ability to take simple concepts and push them to their absolute limits. The battle around Kepler Station had been raging for 6 hours when the Imperial forces got their first real glimpse of what humans were truly capable of. Admiral Vex thought he was fighting a conventional military force with standard warships and defense platforms. He was wrong. Captain Tay had been hauling mining equipment between asteroid colonies for 15 years. His cargo ship Mountain's Heart wasn't built for war. It was designed to carry heavy machinery and bulk materials through the cold emptiness of space. But when the call came for all human vessels to join the fight, Tay didn't hesitate. He had stripped out the cargo bays and filled them with every explosive he could find. Industrial charges meant for asteroid mining, chemical rockets, even old nuclear warheads that had been sitting in storage for decades. His ship had become a flying bomb, and he was steering it straight at the Imperial battle line. "This is Mountain's Heart," Tay broadcast on the open channel. "Coming in hot." The Imperial tactical officer Crix watched the cargo ship approaching on his scanners, confusion evident in his alien features. "Sir, that vessel appears to be a civilian. Transport, why is it approaching our formation?" Before anyone could answer, the Mountain's Heart slammed into the Imperial cruiser Void Talon at full speed. The explosion lit up space like a new star, completely destroying both vessels and severely damaging two nearby ships. Across the battlefield, similar scenes were playing out. Human industrial stations that had been mining asteroids just days before were now churning out ammunition at an incredible rate. Automated manufacturing systems that usually produce tools and equipment had been reprogrammed to build weapons and drone swarms. "They're using everything as a weapon," Crix reported, his voice rising with panic as he watched his tactical display. "Civilian vessels, industrial equipment, even their cargo containers are becoming guided missiles." Captain Sue sat in the pilot's seat of her small civilian shuttle, watching the massive Imperial flagship grow larger through her view screen. The Stellar Wind was just a passenger transport designed to carry workers between mining stations. But today it would serve a different purpose. Her shuttle's cargo bay was packed with every explosive device she could gather: mining charges, fuel cells, even compressed oxygen tanks that would turn into deadly shrapnel when they detonated. She had removed the safety systems and set everything to blow on impact. "Control, this is Stellar Wind," she spoke calmly into her communicator. "Beginning final approach." The Imperial flagship's defensive guns were trying to track her small craft, but she was flying erratically, using debris from destroyed ships. As cover, the automated targeting systems couldn't get a lock on something so small and fast. "Sue, pull back." Commander Hannah's voice crackled through the radio. "We can find another way." But Sue had already made her choice. She thought about her brother who had died when the Harmony's edge was destroyed, about her home colony that was now under alien occupation, about the future her children would have if humanity lost this war. "For humanity," she whispered, and pushed her engines to maximum power. The shuttle streaked through space and smashed directly into the Imperial flagship's main hangar bay. The explosion tore through the alien ship's fighter deployment systems, destroying dozens of enemy aircraft and crippling their ability to launch air support. Admiral Vex watched the tactical display in growing horror as his technological superiority crumbled before human creativity. His sophisticated energy weapons were being countered by simple electromagnetic pulse devices that the humans seemed to build from spare parts. His advanced targeting systems were completely overwhelmed by clouds of metallic chaff and swarms of decoy drones. "How do they adapt so quickly?" he demanded, his reptilian hands gripping the command console. "We have the most advanced military technology in the galaxy. How are these primitives countering everything we throw at them?" His tactical AI, a sophisticated computer system that had analyzed thousands of battles, processed the question for several seconds before responding in its mechanical voice. "Unknown. Human adaptation rate exceeds all previously recorded parameters. They appear to weaponize any available technology, regardless of original purpose." The truth was simple, though the aliens couldn't understand it. Humans didn't see a clear distinction between military and civilian technology. To them, everything was just a tool that could be modified, adapted, and used for whatever purpose the situation required. A mining laser could become a weapon, a cargo ship could become a missile, a communications satellite could become a bomb. In human hands, there was no such thing as purely peaceful technology. There were only resources waiting to be used in the fight for survival. The Imperial flagship Eternal Dominion shuddered as human boarding pods slammed into its hull like metallic meteors. Admiral Vex had never imagined that the primitive humans would attempt something so suicidal as boarding his vessel during active combat. In all his years of conquest, enemy forces had always tried to destroy Imperial ships from a distance, not climb aboard them. The boarding pods cut through the ship's outer armor with industrial plasma torches, creating rough circular holes that vented atmosphere into space. Through these breaches came something the Imperial forces had never encountered before: human soldiers trained for close-quarters combat. Sergeant Kang was the first through the breach, his combat armor sealed against the vacuum of space. Behind him came 12 of humanity's finest Marines, each one carrying weapons designed for fighting in confined spaces. They moved through the alien corridors with a fluid precision that spoke of countless hours of training. The Imperial crew, members they encountered were tall, graceful beings with large eyes and delicate limbs. Their species had evolved from creatures that ate plants and fruits, developing keen senses and quick reflexes to avoid predators, but never the killer instincts needed to be predators themselves. When the first Imperial soldier saw the human boarding party advancing down the corridor, his reaction was pure panic. These humans moved like hunting animals, their eyes constantly scanning for threats, their weapons held with practiced ease. Everything about them screamed predator to creatures whose ancestors had spent millions of years running from such beings. "Contact front," the Imperial soldier shouted, raising his energy rifle with shaking hands. But before he could fire, Kang had already moved, rolling behind cover and flanking the alien's position with movements that seemed impossibly fast. The brief firefight was over in seconds. The Imperial energy weapons were designed for long-range space combat, not close-quarters fighting in narrow corridors. The humans had brought shotguns, submachine guns, and combat knives, weapons perfect for this kind of brutal personal warfare. "Secure the command deck," Kang ordered his team, his voice eerily calm despite the chaos erupting around them. "Team Alpha, take the engineering section. Team Beta, disable their communications. Team Gamma, with me." The Imperial crew fled before the advancing humans like frightened animals. Their natural instincts, honed by millions of years of evolution, told them to run from these apex predators. The ship's corridors filled with the sound of alien voices, crying out in panic as they abandoned their posts. Admiral Vex watched his tactical displays in growing horror as red warning lights began flashing across his bridge. Human soldiers were systematically taking control of his ship, section by section, with ruthless efficiency that spoke of careful planning and extensive training. "Sir," his communications officer cried out, his tentacles writhing with fear. "They've cut our main power lines. Life support is failing on deck 7 through 12. Security teams respond," Vex ordered desperately. But his security forces were already retreating, unable to cope with human soldiers who seemed to anticipate their every move. The bridge doors suddenly exploded inward as human combat engineers used shaped charges to blast through the reinforced barriers. Through the smoke came Sergeant Kang and his team, their weapons trained on every alien on the bridge. These weren't the cowering primitives that Imperial intelligence had described. These were something far more dangerous: predators who had learned to use technology, apex hunters who had turned warfare into an art form. "Admiral," Kang said politely, his rifle aimed at Vex's center mass, "I suggest you order your remaining ships to surrender. This battle is over." But Admiral Vex, faced with the complete collapse of everything he had believed about human capabilities, could only think of escape. "Retreat," he ordered his surviving ships through the emergency communication system. "All units fall back immediately." The remaining Imperial vessels began turning away from Kepler Station, their crews desperate to escape the nightmare that this battle had become. But Captain One, commanding the human destroyer Retribution, had been waiting for exactly this moment. "All ships pursue and destroy," One ordered over the human fleet communication network. "No Imperial vessel leaves this system intact. They came here to conquer us. Let's show them what conquest really looks like." The human fleet, energized by their victory at the flagship, surged forward in pursuit of the retreating aliens. The hunters had become the hunted, and humanity intended to make sure the galaxy learned a very important lesson about what happened when you threatened Earth's children. The emergency alarms echoed through Imperial Command as reports flooded in from The Kepler Station disaster. Admiral Vex's flagship was in human hands, half his fleet was destroyed, and the survivors were retreating in complete chaos. The Empire had not suffered such a devastating defeat in over 2 centuries. Emperor Zalthek himself authorized the deployment of the Void Guard, the Empire's most elite fighting force. These weren't ordinary soldiers but genetically enhanced warriors who had been bred and trained from birth for one purpose: to crush any resistance the Empire encountered. Commander Thex led the Void Guard assault personally. His 7-foot frame was covered in biomechanical armor that could withstand direct hits from starship weapons. His squad of 50 elite warriors had never failed to achieve their objectives, whether boarding enemy vessels or storming planetary fortifications. These humans got lucky once, Thex growled to his troops as their assault ship approached the human lines. But luck doesn't work twice. We'll show them what real warriors look like. The Void Guard's attack began with a coordinated assault on 3 human positions simultaneously. Their advanced armor shrugged off human small arms fire, and their plasma weapons carved through human defensive barriers like hot knives through ice. For the first 10 minutes, it looked like the Empire's elite forces would finally turn the tide of battle. Then Colonel Ryu arrived with his tactical response team. Ryu had been studying the captured Imperial weapons for weeks, learning how they worked, understanding their strengths and weaknesses. More importantly, he had figured out how to combine them with human technology in ways the aliens had never imagined. Fire teams Alpha and Beta hit them with kinetic rounds to collapse their shields, Ryu ordered calmly over the radio. Team Gamma, the moment those barriers go down, switch to captured plasma weapons and burn through their armor. The human soldiers executed the plan with precision that would have impressed any military academy instructor. Streams of tungsten rounds slammed into the Void Guard's energy shields, overloading the defensive systems exactly as planned. The moment the barriers flickered and died, human soldiers switched to Imperial plasma rifles and began cutting through the supposedly invincible biomechanical armor. Impossible! Commander Thex gasped as he watched his elite warriors falling one by one. His own armor was smoking from multiple plasma hits, weapons that his own people had designed, now being used against them with deadly effectiveness. They're using our own weapons against us. The combination was devastating in ways the Imperial designers had never considered. Their shields were built to stop either kinetic or energy attacks, but not both simultaneously. Their armor could resist plasma weapons or physical projectiles, but not the precise coordination of both attack types that the humans employed. Lieutenant Yun crouched in her communications bunker, monitoring Imperial radio chatter with growing satisfaction. The alien voices were becoming increasingly desperate as reports came in from across the battlefield. "Sir," she reported to Colonel Ryu, "Imperial communications are going crazy. They're reporting massive casualties across their entire fleet. I'm picking up emergency calls for reinforcements from 3 different sectors." Ryu allowed himself a cold smile as he watched another group of Void Guard warriors retreat under the combined fire of his teams. These supposedly elite aliens were learning the same lesson that every enemy of humanity eventually discovered. Superior equipment meant nothing without superior tactics. "Let them come," he said quietly. "We'll be ready." The grinding battle continued for hours as more and more Imperial reinforcements arrived, only to be systematically destroyed by human forces that seemed to adapt and improve with every engagement. Every new weapon the aliens brought to bear was quickly studied, countered, and often turned against its creators. The Imperial tactical doctrine, refined through centuries of conquest, proved completely useless against an enemy that refused to follow any established patterns of warfare. The aliens expected their enemies to fight with honor, using conventional tactics and standard military formations, but humans didn't fight with honor. They fought to win. They used decoy signals to confuse, alien targeting systems. They rigged destroyed Imperial equipment to explode when the aliens tried to recover it. They even painted fake weapon signatures on civilian vessels to draw enemy fire away from real military targets. Every trick, every deception, every dirty tactic that had been developed in humanity's long history of warfare was brought to bear against an enemy that had never encountered such ruthless creativity. The Empire was learning that their technological superiority meant nothing against opponents who could turn any advantage into a weapon, any weakness into an opportunity. The battle had become a grinding test of endurance, imperial desperation against human tenacity. And humanity was winning. The surviving Imperial ships limped away from the Kepler station battlefield, their crews shaken and demoralized. Admiral Vex had ordered a fighting retreat, hoping to regroup at the outer edges of the star system before the humans could pursue. It seemed like a reasonable plan. After all, human ships were limited by their primitive faster-than-light drives, or so the Imperial intelligence reports claimed. What Vex didn't know was that Dr. May had been working around the clock in the captured Imperial cruiser star render, surrounded by alien technology that would have amazed scientists just weeks before. The ship's hyperdrive core lay partially disassembled on her makeshift laboratory table, its crystalline components glowing with exotic energy. Dr. May had spent her entire career studying theoretical physics, dreaming of the day humanity might unlock the secrets of faster-than-light travel. Now, with actual alien technology in her hands, she was reverse engineering systems that had taken the Empire centuries to develop. The quantum field generators use a crystalline matrix to fold space-time, she muttered to herself, carefully examining the alien components under a microscope. But the frequency modulation is all wrong for maximum efficiency. They're wasting at least 30% of their energy output. Her assistant, Engineer Cho, looked up from his own workstation where he was analyzing the ship's navigation systems. "Doc, I think I've figured out how their tracking works. They leave quantum signatures in hyperspace, like footprints that we can follow." Dr. May's eyes lit up with understanding, which means if we can duplicate their drive technology and improve on it, we can not only match their speed, but actually track their movements through hyperspace. She turned to her communication console and activated the secure channel to Human Command. "Command, this is Dr. May. Reverse engineering complete. We can track Imperial ships anywhere in the galaxy, and our modified drives will actually be faster than theirs." Within hours, human engineering teams across the fleet were installing the new hyperdrive modifications. But these weren't simple copies of Imperial technology. They were improvements, refined by human understanding of physics and enhanced by human innovation. Captain Bin received his new orders while his destroyer, Swift Justice, was still being fitted with the upgraded drive systems. "Strike Team Alpha, you're tasked with hitting their supply convoys. Intelligence indicates major logistical routes through the Vega sector." His tactical officer, Lieutenant Park, studied the star charts with obvious excitement. "Sir, if this new drive works as advertised, we can hit their supply lines and be gone before they know what happened." "Then let's give it a try," Bin replied with a grim smile. Across Imperial space, similar scenes began playing out as human strike teams appeared seemingly from nowhere. Commander Oak led raids against isolated outposts, destroying fuel depots and communication relays with surgical precision. Captain Lee ambushed Imperial patrol squadrons in deep space, using humanity's new understanding of alien technology to predict their movements. The Imperial forces found themselves facing something they had never encountered before: an enemy that could strike anywhere, anytime, without warning. Admiral Vex was reviewing casualty reports in his temporary command center when the first panicked transmissions began arriving. Imperial Captain Bok's voice crackled through the communication system, filled with terror and confusion. "Admiral, they're everywhere. Human ships just appeared out of hyperspace and destroyed our entire supply convoy. How is that possible?" "Our intelligence said they couldn't even leave their own star system." More reports flooded in. The mining station at Proxima 7, destroyed. The fuel depot at Wolf 359, gone. The communication relay at Barnard's Star, offline. Each attack was swift, precise, and completely unexpected. "How did they learn our technology so quickly?" Captain Bok transmitted from his fleeing vessel. "They're using our own hyperdrives against us, but their ships are faster than ours. It's like they improved on our designs." Vex stared at the tactical display in growing horror. Red marks indicating destroyed Imperial assets were appearing across the galaxy like a spreading infection. The humans weren't just defending their territory anymore. They were hunting Imperial forces with the methodical efficiency of apex predators. "Sir," his intelligence officer reported, his voice shaking, "we're receiving similar reports from 12 different sectors. Human ships are appearing simultaneously across thousands of light years. They've somehow learned to track our movements through hyperspace." Admiral Vex realized with crystal clarity that everything had changed. The Empire had unleashed something far more dangerous than they had ever imagined. These humans didn't just defend, they learned, adapted, and then turned their enemy's strengths into weapons against them. The hunters had become the hunted, and humanity was very, very good at hunting. The massive space fortress called Veltar hung in the darkness between stars like a metallic mountain, its hull bristling with weapon batteries and shield generators. It was the Empire's most heavily defended outpost in this sector, built to withstand attacks from entire fleets. Admiral Vex had chosen this place for his final stand because he believed it was absolutely impregnable. The surviving Imperial ships limped into the fortress's protective embrace, their crews exhausted and demoralized after weeks of running from human hunters. Vex stood in the station's command center, surrounded by defensive systems that had never failed in over 300 years of operation. "Activate all defensive grids," he ordered his remaining officers. "Full power to the shields. If those humans want to finish this fight, they'll have to come through the strongest fortress in the galaxy." The massive energy barriers hummed to life around the station, creating overlapping fields of protection that could stop the combined firepower of 100 warships. The automated defense turrets tracked across space, ready to destroy anything that approached within weapons range. For the first time in weeks, Admiral Vex felt something approaching confidence. "Let them come," he muttered, watching his tactical displays. "They'll break themselves against our defenses like waves against a cliff." Then the lights went out. The command center plunged into absolute darkness as every system in the fortress suddenly died. Emergency power failed to activate. Backup generators remained silent. Even the personal communicators carried by the crew members went dead, as if some invisible force had drained every source of energy in the entire station. "Sir," Captain Bock whispered in the darkness, his voice barely audible, "there are humans inside the station." Agent Jun had been living in the maintenance tunnels of Fortress Veltar for 3 weeks, ever since his stealth ship had delivered him and 11 other human operatives to the station's outer hull. They had entered through waste disposal ports that were too small for the Empire's larger species to use, crawling through spaces that the alien designers had never imagined could be exploited. For 21 days, Jun and his team had studied every system in the fortress. They mapped power conduits, identified critical junction points, and planted carefully designed electromagnetic pulse devices at strategic locations throughout the station's infrastructure. "All teams, execute," Jun whispered into his throat microphone. Tho. EMP devices detonated simultaneously, sending precisely calibrated electromagnetic pulses through the station's power grid. But these weren't crude weapons designed to destroy. They were surgical instruments that disrupted specific frequency ranges, turning the fortress's own electrical systems against itself. The shields collapsed. The weapons went offline. The life support systems began failing. Most importantly, the communication arrays that might have called for help were completely dead. Imperial forces stumbled through the darkened corridors, their night vision useless in the complete absence of light. They could hear movement in the darkness, footsteps that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere, the quiet whispers of voices speaking in the human language they couldn't understand. Outside the fortress, space itself seemed to ripple and bend as dozens of human ships dropped their stealth systems and became visible. They had been waiting in perfect silence, their crews patient as hunters watching prey step into a carefully prepared trap. Admiral Vex found himself standing in his powerless command center, surrounded by the darkness that had become humanity's ally. Through the viewports, he could see the lights of human warships forming a perfect circle around his fortress, their weapons trained on his helpless station. With shaking hands, he activated his personal emergency communicator, one of the few devices that still functioned. The small screen flickered to life, showing him the face that had become the symbol of human resistance. We surrender," Vex stammered, his voice breaking as he spoke the words he had never imagined saying. General Park's weathered face appeared. On the screen, his expression as cold and unforgiving as the vacuum of space itself. Behind him, Jun could see the flags of Earth and its colonies, symbols of a species that refused to bow to anyone. Unconditional surrender, Park stated simply. Your fleet, your technology, your star charts, your military codes, everything. No negotiations, no conditions, complete capitulation. But we are the Empire, Vex protested weakly, grasping at the last remnants of his former authority. We have ruled this galaxy for 1,000 years. You can't just... You were the Empire, Park interrupted, his voice cutting through Vex's protests, like a blade. Past tense. Now you're a warning that we're going to send to every species in this galaxy. Humanity doesn't start fights, Admiral, but we always finish them, and we never ever quit. The transmission ended, leaving Vex alone in the darkness with the wreckage of everything he had believed about Imperial superiority. Within hours, the surviving Imperial forces were fleeing into the deepest reaches of space, carrying with them a message that would spread to every corner of the galaxy. They would tell other species about the humans, the deceptively primitive creatures who turned everything into a weapon, who learned from every mistake, who adapted to every challenge. The Empire's reign of terror was over. In its place stood humanity, not as conquerors but as guardians. The galaxy had learned that there were worse things than being ruled by an empire. There was being hunted by humans who refused to quit.